Hey guys, what's up? So this is the OBSBOT Meet 2 and it's definitely the smallest and most portable 4K webcam I've ever used, but for being this tiny, the image quality is actually pretty amazing and it's surprisingly packed with features, including some of the latest in AI imaging technology. Now, if you're a regular to the channel, you've probably seen me talk about some of the OBSBOT webcams before. To be completely honest with you, I didn't really know much about them until I first reviewed their Tiny 2 webcam last year. Really loved it, and since they've been on my radar, it seems like they've been consistently updating their lineup with new cameras. First there was the Tiny 2 Lite, which I also reviewed not too long ago, and now there is this even smaller Meet 2. Now, by dropping these high quality cameras at very competitive prices, they're punching above their weight, giving some of the most well-known brands out there a serious run for their money. So logically, one of the most common questions you guys have been asking in the comments is, how do these cameras compare to the popular Insta360 webcams, some of which I've also reviewed on the channel? And how do these compare to the OG webcams like the Logitech MX Brio and the Brio 4K? Well, why don't we just compare all of them and find out? Let's ramble.
Hold up, things go wild when I pull up. They all on me like it once.
Alright guys, so to give today's comparison a little bit of structure, we're going to focus on a couple of things I typically look for in a top-of-the-line webcam in 2024. Most importantly, of course, we're going to look at the 4K image quality. Next, I want to know how quickly these cameras can focus on a subject, because nobody likes a blurry image, and I'm interested in how well these cameras perform in low-light situations. I use these cameras primarily here in the studio and also in hotel rooms when I'm traveling. The lighting conditions in those hotel rooms, as well as most home offices, by the way, aren't always ideal, so low light performance is definitely a big one for me. I want to know how well these cameras can track me, whether it's using an actual gimbal or by means of AI tracking, and we will be comparing all of the apps, both in terms of features and also user friendliness. And lastly, of course, we'll be factoring in the price. Alright, let's start off by comparing the two gimbal cameras. These are arguably the most popular cameras of the bunch and probably the most feature rich, the OBSBOT Tiny 2 Lite and the Insta360 Link 2, which is the successor to the original Insta360 Link. So right off the bat, it is clear that the image quality on both of these cameras is superb. I mean, these cameras have gotten so good that it's really hard to tell them apart from a mirrorless camera. The only real giveaway is the lack of bokeh, you know, the blurry background you typically only get when using a proper camera. Although these cameras have a fix for that too, we'll get back to that in a minute. Both cameras are set to 4K at 30 frames per second, and well, I think we can all agree they look pretty great. There are some differences in style. The Insta360 looks quite saturated and very sharp, which makes my face look a bit red, whereas the OBSBOT gives me more of a natural look with a skin tone that's much closer to my actual complexion. Yes, I am that pale. The focusing speed on both cameras is really fast. We're talking about fractions of a second, although I do notice slightly more focus breathing on the OBSBOT Tiny 2. Now, one of the key selling points of both of these cameras are the tracking features. Contrary to a lot of cameras that offer AI-generated tracking, these two have actual gimbals and they can therefore track you across a much wider space, which is a very useful feature to have, especially when you give a lot of presentations standing up and you like to move across the room. But these cameras also do a much better job at things like desk mode, since these cameras can actually tilt and therefore not a lot of computational trickery is needed to get that real top desk view. The actual tracking response on both cameras is super fast. The Insta360 has 3 tracking speeds, slow, ordinary, and quick, and the OBSBOT Tiny 2 Lite has 2, standard and motion. Personally, I prefer the slower setting on both cameras since the fast setting can look a bit jarring. Regarding the apps, I find both to be reasonably user-friendly. All the standard features like view adjustment and manual image control present on both, but OBSBOT Center definitely has the edge over the Insta360 controller in terms of effects. While the Insta360 offers all the standard options such as backgrounds and some filters, OBSBOT offers a whole host of AI features to alter your appearance. You can choose from one of the programmed options, but you can literally go in and change every single aspect of your face, from your eyes, your cheekbones to your nose and your mouth. I can even make my European non-fluoride teeth look more American. Most of those features I won't be using, but what I do often use is the AI-generated bokeh. And I do believe OBSBOT does a better job at that. You can adjust the intensity on both cameras, but even on the low intensity, the bokeh on the Insta360 looks pretty artificial to me. The major difference though between these two cameras can be found in the low light performance. Here, the OBSBOT Tiny 2 really takes the cake. Even when I turn off virtually all of the lights in the studio, it still manages to look very clear, very sharp. The Insta360 Link 2 retails at $199 and the OBSBOT Tiny 2 Lite currently goes for $159. Now, both of these cameras have smaller and more portable little brothers, the OBSBOT Meet 2 and the Insta360 Link 2C. I guess you could describe both of them as mini gimbal-less versions of their bigger brothers. They both operate within the same app environment, of course with some limitations mainly related to the lack of a gimbal. Again, both are set to 4K at 60 FPS, and the image on both cameras looks fairly similar to their gimbaled counterparts. The same saturated look on the Insta360 and the more natural, somewhat brighter look on the OBSBOT Meet 2. And checking out the low light situation, we see that once again, the OBSBOT is a very clear winner. Honestly, I'm not really sure why this is the case. They both have half-inch sensors and they both have a very fast aperture at f1.8, so plenty of light coming in, but whatever OBSBOT's doing, it's clearly working. Now, like I said, a lot of the features will be the exact same as on the Tiny 2 Lite and the Link 2, so there's no need to go over all the beauty features, etc. again. What I want to know is how good the autofocus is, and as you can see, it is excellent on both cameras. What's most impressive to me though is the way these cameras can handle the lack of a gimbal, because both of these cameras have a tracking feature. Now, you might be wondering, how is that possible since the camera can't really move? Well, they basically just zoom in a little bit, which gives them some room within the frame to play with, making it seem like the camera is following you, when in reality it's just panning around its own maximum frame width and zooming in and out as you move closer or farther away from the camera. I can't really say that one is better than the other. It really does work great on both cameras. I will say though that the OBSBOT is a bit better at tracking specific parts of your body. When both are set to upper body, the Insta360 still seems to lock onto my face. Only when I choose the whole body option will it show my upper body. What's also cool about these cameras is that both of them feature a portrait mode setting, which is especially useful if you intend to use these cameras for social media, like streaming to Facebook or Instagram. In both cases, it's fairly easy to switch to portrait mode from within the apps. However, when it comes to flipping the actual camera 90 degrees into portrait mode, it feels like the Insta360 has introduced some unnecessary hurdles because you will need a special tripod head that lets you tilt the camera sideways. OBSBOT seems to have put a little more thought into this because you literally just grab the camera and flip it sideways on the exact same magnet, making this a much more appealing package for travel since I won't have to bring a bunch of additional accessories. Right, so let's move on to the two Logitech cameras, the MX Brio and the Brio 4K. And I guess it makes sense to compare these to the Tiny 2 Lite and the Insta360 Link 2 because they're often mentioned in the same context. But to be completely honest with you, in my personal opinion, the Logitech cameras look and feel pretty outdated compared to both the OBSBOT and the Insta360. In terms of image quality, the Logitech Brio 4K kind of falls off immediately for me. It looks overexposed and the white balance seems to be off. My first instinct would be to go to the app and just fix those things, but it looks like the camera cannot be adjusted on a Mac. All the settings are grayed out in Logitech G Hub, and in the Logi Options Plus app, it doesn't even show up. So unless I'm committing some massive user error here, the Brio 4K Stream Edition is a hard pass for me, at least on a Mac. So I guess that covers the user friendliness of that app as well. The MX Brio looks a lot better in my opinion, and it showed up in the Logi Options Plus app first try, including the customization settings. The temperature on the image is a bit too cool for my taste, a bit too blue, but that can be adjusted pretty easily in the app alongside the other standard options like brightness, contrast, saturation, etc. It does have HDR, and that does need to be turned on in my opinion for the image to look good here in the studio. You can switch between manual focus and autofocus, and you can play around with the field of view and the crop. It can get pretty wide at 90 degrees, but I set it to 78 degrees to resemble the other cameras better. Once the field of view is cropped in a little, that does give you the option to sort of virtually reposition your camera, but that is pretty much where the options end. No AI stuff, and probably most notably, no tracking. No panning, no tilting, none of it. The Brio does sit pretty flexible on its clamp, so you can move the angle around a little bit, but that will be a manual operation. The Logitech MX Brio comes in at $199 and you can pick up the Brio 4K for around $160. So in terms of pricing, I kind of get why people will be comparing these to the OBSBOT and the Insta360, but in terms of image quality and especially in terms of features, I really don't think the Logitech cams are in the same league. Alright guys, to finish up this comparison, I'm going to put all 6 cameras side by side for you and do some quick focus tests, some tracking, and a low light test. And then I would love for you guys to leave a comment down below telling me which camera you prefer and why.